Well, let's talk to the advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister, Mark Regev. Good to see you this morning, Mr. Regev. Look, the Israeli Defence Minister has said in the last few hours Israel is not preparing for a ceasefire. There is no end date for the operation. Only when we achieve complete quiet can we talk about calm. What does that mean?
I think he's trying to say that we don't want a BandAid quick fix only to see everything explode again tomorrow. I mean, we're hitting Hamas hard, and the truth is they'd be very happy for us to stop. But just to have them regroup and get a timeout and then for them to hit us again tomorrow, there's no point in that. This has been going on for too long, and we need a solution that will be sustainable.
Yeah, but the solution surely isn't to bomb Hamas out of existence, is it?
No one said that, but Hamas has to understand that shooting rockets into Israel is unacceptable and can't be considered a norm. And we have to very firmly make sure that we're not going to come out of this just to re-enter it again in the near future. It must be remembered who we're talking about. We're talking about a territory where the Palestinian government has no authority whatsoever, where Hamas has taken over. Hamas, a terrorist organization, not just the Israeli government say so, but the UK government, the EU, the Americans, the Canadians, the Japanese, even across the Arab world. The Arabs accept the recognition of Hamas. They recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. This is a group of fanatics with a very extreme agenda who have no qualms whatsoever about shooting hundreds of rockets at innocent civilians.
So how far is Israel prepared to go to quell this? I mean, there is talk about a ground invasion being at least approved, even if no immediate plans are in place for that.
Obviously, we have to look at all possible contingencies. We would be irresponsible to do otherwise, but we will do what we need to do to protect our civilian population, as I believe the British government would do to protect the British population. And of course, our goal is to bring about long-term peace and quiet. We want to see a situation where Israeli civilians don't have to live in fear of an incoming rocket sent by Gaza. We've had now 3 nights in a row where the sirens have been going off in major population centers in Israel, where people have been running to the bomb shelters, my family included. This is a difficult time, but there's no point, as I said before, to have some sort of a BandAid quick fix only to go through all this again next week. We want to come out of this with a sustained period of quiet. We want a new reality where we don't have to live in fear of these incoming rockets.
And yet, I mean, you talk about the importance of safety for civilians. Everybody understands that, but what about Palestinian civilians? We think 65 people in Gaza have died. How many of those were civilians? We don't know, apart from the number that there are at least 14 Palestinian children who've died. I mean, a lot of people are looking at this and saying, you know, although they understand the need for Israel to defend itself, this is not a proportional response.
Well, I want to say first off that we don't want to see anyone, innocent people, caught up in the crossfire between us and Hamas. We don't want to see anyone hurt unnecessarily, and of course, heaven forbid, children. That's the last thing we want to see. I mean, every time a child is killed, Israeli or Palestinian, it's a tragedy. It shouldn't happen. But we face a very difficult dilemma here, because Hamas is actually committing a double war crime. They are not only indiscriminately shooting at Israeli civilians, bombarding our cities with volley after volley of rocket, but at the same time, they implant their terrorist military machine inside civilian neighborhoods. They fire from mosques, from schools to built-up areas. And if we want to take out their rocket launchers, we have to try to be as surgically as is possible in a very, very complex combat situation, often with civilians in the vicinity. Now, we try to be as surgical as we can. We don't want to hit the civilians. But Hamas, in doing so, is committing a second war crime. Not only are they attacking Israeli civilians, but they're deliberately exploiting and abusing the Gaza civilian population as a human shield for their military terrorist machine.
I mean, you talk about them committing war crimes. One of our MPs over here, who has a Palestinian mum, as it goes, but she's been looking at the situation in Sheikh Jarrah and saying, well, that in itself, from the actions that Israel is taking, is breaking the 4th Geneva Convention.
I beg to disagree. What you have in Sheikh Jarrah is a land dispute between two different groups, two different individuals, where you have property. There were Jews living in Sheikh Jarrah before the 1948 war. And they now claim that they want to return to that property. Now, the Israeli government hasn't taken a side in the court case, but this is a land dispute. But surely we can all agree that in any land dispute, there does not have to be violence. There definitely doesn't have to be an excuse for people to send missiles into Israel.
But I mean, in terms of stepping back from the brink here, which the international community is really calling for, really trying to apply pressure on both sides here to do that, wouldn't stopping this, whatever is going on in Sheikh Jarrah at the moment, putting a pause on that, trying to take a step back, trying to get behind the negotiating table again, be a really important move at this stage?
I think it's important to remember that the problem here is Hamas. The Palestinian government is someone we've negotiated with in the past and we can negotiate with in the future. But Hamas is a terrorist organization that, if you read their charter, they say every Israeli is a legitimate target, man, woman, and child. They don't believe in negotiations. They believe in destroying Israel. They're very extreme in their views. They've been called a jihadist organization. They're part of Islamic radical sort of worldview that believes my country should be destroyed and all the civilians in it should face death. This is not a group that believes in negotiations. In fact, the first huge wave of Hamas violence happened during when the peace process was in high gear, during the years of the Oslo process. Then we were told Hamas is killing people because they want to end the peace process. Now, if you're telling me today they're doing it because there's no peace process, well, you can't have it both ways. Hamas is killing Israelis because that's what they do. They have to stop doing so.
Mark Regev, good to talk to you today. Thank you.